Hello everyone, this is Danny Sarlo and this is my presentation on two models by Tony Bates and Nieveen. The original Bates model was completed in 1995 and it involved four basic outlines. First, that the course outline is developed. Two, the selection of media. Three, the development and selection of materials. And finally, for number four, course delivery. The Bates model focuses primarily on online learning. Bates expanded on his original model in his 2015 book, Teaching in a Digital Age, where he came out with the model of sections. Sections is an acronym that stands for Students' Ease of Use, Costs, Teaching and Media Selection, Interaction, Organizational Issues, Networking, and Security and Privacy. Okay, now I'm going to go through all of the sections model, one piece at a time. So first is the S part, which stands for students. During this part, he said quality instruction is dependent on knowing your students, including demographics, diversity, and experience in education. So a class designed primarily for online learning, you may expect that kids in high school or students that are going for their undergrad degree may need some additional support built into the online learning than students pursuing a master's degree, for example. Second was access. So do instructors consider whether or not students have access to the devices that they're expected to use or the internet to interact with course materials? And then finally, a universal design for learning, so that we are also taking into account students with disabilities and we are designing the course in a way with universal design for learning in mind. Next up, we have the E section, which stands for ease of use. So it is expected that both students and instructors have some extent of computer and information literacy to access online learning. That means, can you do things like work on a Word document? Do you know how to navigate the website and things like that? Students, for this reason, may require an orientation to become accustomed to the specific software or platform that they're going to be using for their online learning. I included a quote here that says an educational program or indeed any website should be well structured, intuitive for the user to use, and easy to navigate. And then finally, a platform needs to be reliable. Students should easily be able to access the platform and work should be backed up. That means just having a reliable thing that is always working no matter when you access. It can be accessed at any time and it always works. The C part of the sections model stands for costs. Certain cost questions need to be considered when you're developing an online platform for learning, such as what mediums will you be using and what is the cost to the institution or the individual students. Some drivers of cost here are the development and production of materials, the delivery of materials, the number of students and the scalability, the experience of the instructor working with the medium, and whether the instructor develops materials alone, which is called self-development, or works with professionals. So he had mentioned in his book a massive online learning community, and the more students that you have enrolled in the class, that pushes costs down for each individual student, and that's what he means by scalability. The larger the scale, theoretically, the less cost it would be to the students. For the T part of the sections model, we have teaching and media selection, and here in this chapter, he drew heavily on Mayer's 12 principles of multimedia design. The first is coherence. We want to keep it simple. Whatever the students are interacting with on the online platform, keep it simple. It shouldn't be overcomplicated. Finally, signaling. So, for example, highlighting and drawing attention to what you want to show when you're developing media or choosing media to use in the course. Avoiding redundancy. Just make sure that they're not doing the same things over and over. Spatial contiguity. Words and pictures should be near to each other. Temporal contiguity. Words and pictures should be presented simultaneously. Segmenting. Use your pace segments. So he gave an example where a 6-minute YouTube video or several of them would be better than one 50-minute video. And he backed this up with some research actually that shows when people are working with a video or looking at a video on an online course, their attention really falls off after the 6-minute mark and then even more so after the 9-minute mark. So several shorter videos are better than one 50-minute video, even of a lecture or something like that. Pre-training. Students should have some background knowledge built up before engaging in depth with the topic. You don't just want to throw things at people. They have no idea kind of what they're looking at. Modality. Graphics and narration should be presented at the same time. Multimedia. Words, pictures, video, narration are better used in conjunction. Personalization. providing a human voice or face to go with the narration. Voice, a human voice rather than a text-to-speech option, just makes it, again, these two kind of go hand in hand together. Having that human voice rather than a text-to-speech helps personalize it for the people interacting with the media that you've chosen. And then no image, sometimes the picture of a person in a multimedia lesson is unnecessary. The next part of the sections model is the I, which stands for interaction. First, we have student interaction with the learning material. So this is when the students are independently interacting with the material that you have provided on the online learning course. How are those students interacting with the learning material? Next up, we have the student-teacher interaction. This is needed to develop those higher order learning outcomes. Think of like Bloom's taxonomy, where students are synthesizing and analyzing different things. And this may be needed, especially with students, as mentioned earlier in the video, who are less experienced, especially with online learning. They may need some interaction with the teacher for clarification and to develop those higher order learning outcomes. Next, we have student-student interaction. And I included a quote here that I'm just going to mention. It says, asynchronous online discussion forums built into learning management systems. So that's kind of like what we do on Blackboard, how we interact with each other. That's what they're talking about here. And one of the ways to do that could be through a forum or a discussion board or something like that. And then finally, interaction and feedback. Timely and appropriate feedback is needed for all learners so that they know that they are meeting the objectives of the course. The next part of the sections model that we have to consider are organizational issues. So this is just taking into account the readiness for teaching with technology. Are staff trained? Are the instructors trained to use this type of technology or whatever platform you decide on using? Do the instructors know how to use it? Do the students know how to use it? Do they need to be trained on this type of technology in order for it to be successful? And is your institution ready for this type of learning? You want to make sure that they have the organizational things in place so that you are ready to roll out an online learning model. Finally, then we have working with professionals. So instructors and institutions may seek out support for implementing online learning in their organization. The next part of the sections model is N, which stands for networking. So we have to ask some questions here, like to what extent will students be allowed to network to meet their learning intentions? Can they use things on social media? Can they seek out professional guidance or something like that online? Can they look to the experts for them to answer questions and to help them with the course material? Student-generated learning resources. They gave an example of a online forum that was math problems, where students showed different math problems that were commonly on mathematics tests, and they kind of created their own website showing the solutions and how they arrive at the solutions and things like that. So are students allowed to use those learning resources that they have developed themselves? And then can you seek out and use other resources or include them in your learning material, such as YouTube or Khan Academy is a really good example, as to show students different things that you want them to learn. And finally, the final S of the sections model stands for security and privacy. Online learning places a need on security and privacy. This means the privacy aspect is, do the students feel safe sharing ideas with one another and with the instructor in a safe space where they may even share controversial views on something without fear of reprisal? Secondly, security of the network and platform can be more of an IT issue, but we need to make sure that whatever platform you are using is secure and that things are backed up and things like that. Privacy, again, is just a place where people are free to express their ideas. Next up, we have the model developed by Nieveen in 1997. The Nieveen model is consistent with ADDIE, as you can kind of see by the waterfall design here in this figure. It has been used to create learning materials, specifically in the school setting. Material for learners and additional material for teachers are provided to ensure successful implementation. As you can see, the model focuses with the beginning on preliminary research, kind of identifying what the problem is, and then it ends with a summative evaluation of the materials that you have created. Throughout this process, as you go down it, you can see that analysis and formative evaluation are included at each step. So this follows an iterative process and an agile design process where they are constantly looking at different things as you go down the model. The Nieveen model. The process begins with researching what is needed and then ends with summative evaluation. However, in between these anchoring activities, the development process goes through several iterative cycles, each consisting of analysis, design, and formative evaluation activities. The initial research in this model may be overlooked if initial large-scale analysis was completed at the outset. In the second step of the design, materials are created, evaluated, and analyzed. In the third step of the design, partially detailed materials are created and used on a smaller scale, and then they are again evaluated and analyzed. In the last cycle, complete materials are tested in large and small group settings. And the model concludes with a summative evaluation after the materials have been used in a variety of settings.